Hellos, guys. How are you doing? I am back. I haven't been doing these live videos in a very long time. I needed the break. I needed to just relax and possibly revamp, relook at how things are and how we can improve things and that's just how I am in general. But however, I thank you guys for joining me. It's been a long time coming. Today we have guest Kim. Let me just accept her request now. So we have guest Kim today, and just waiting for her to come so that we can tell you what we'll be talking about today. So today will be a session jam-packed with parenting, grandparenting, authoritative figures, teaching your children, boundaries, so forth and so on. So I'm really excited for this. And just put a disclaimer on the side also, these sessions are literally just excerpts of how we actually unpack a session or a certain topic. It's not literally a solution to all problems or some problems we may be facing in life. So it is advisable that you actually do visit a therapist or a psychologist. And who better than to talk to Kim, because she already knows what we've been talking about. You'll someone just go to her and be like, yo, Kim, remember that session you had with Lelo the other day? So this is what my problem is. These are the things that you guys spoke about. So please, just let me know about whatever it is that I can do. So yeah, that's literally the gist of things. So I did introduce the topic, authoritative figures. So please, Kim, do let us know what an authoritative figure is.
Hi everybody, and thanks for joining us today. So authoritative figures is really anyone that is it has a power element attached to it. So it's anybody who is in a position of power that sort of inspires obedience or inspires people to emulate them. So meaning, to follow their lead and to authoritative figures generally lead by example. So authoritative figures can take the role of people like parents are authoritative figures, grandparents, teachers, principals, really anybody that is in a position of power where it demands sort of obedience or somebody needing to emulate their behavior. So
Okay.
yeah, that's really what an authoritative figure is.
Okay. You did mention grandparents, right? Someone actually did ask me what the role of grandparents are in their grandchildren's lives. There's one person that I actually asked asked my husband. I'm like, I had a question. They asked what the role is for grandparents. It's like spectators. They literally just clap hands and thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever, and they just cheer you on. That's the role. So I don't know what if you have a different take or if there's anything more you'd like to add to that.
I think I don't like to be too prescriptive on what the role of a grandparent should be, because I think that would be family specific. Every
Yeah.
family negotiate around the boundaries and the roles that everybody plays in the family. And I think similarly for parents. So I think each family will look different. But grandparents can take the role of purely being spectators and sitting
Yeah.
back and, encouraging and, giving thumbs up and so on and so forth. But I think also within like our changing society right now where especially in South Africa, we have many families who are headed by grandparents, and
Yeah.
many families where it's sort of I want to use we can use a blended family scenario
Mm,
as well, where grandparents live in the nuclear household. So
mm,
it looks different in every single family, and therefore the
yeah,
roles will then, the setup will dictate what the roles of the grandparents are.
yeah,
But
yeah,
in our society nowadays, grandparents can definitely take the role of parents and more hands-on and be a
mm,
lot more involved in the child rearing, teaching children. But then grandparents can also be the fun people, the ones that
yeah, yeah,
bring in fun and sort of give mom and dad a time to relax and
mm,
sort of take some time off. So
mm,
it really is dependent on every single family, and I think it's really important for them to negotiate around what those roles
yeah,
would.
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
that's
mm,
true. So another thing, when I was doing the bio of what to say about introducing our live video today, my first sentence was, "It is the season, the festive season, right?
yeah.
Where we will be celebrating with parents, grandparents, extended family members, distant cousins. Everybody will be there to enjoy and share their love, their hugs, so forth and so on. And when it comes to authoritative figures, um, would that actually have, because how, I don't know how exactly to put it. I've read up that an authoritative figure can actually persuade a child or can initiate a child to do certain things or act in a certain way. And if a child has been taught to obey someone who actually is older than them, regardless of how they may feel, they tend to put their feelings aside and literally just obey or be obedient in that regard. My question with that would be, how would one be careful on putting a perspective on what an authoritative figure should look like when it comes to parent to child, parent to grandparent, like grandparent to child, and etc.
Mm. See, I'm very mindful of even using the term authoritative figure, all
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just because the word, like I said in the beginning, has it's a power, there's a power dynamic attached to that.
mm,
And because of, I think, how we have been socialized and so on and so forth, we've been taught to blindly obey people
yeah,
who are in authority.
yeah,
Okay, and so what you're actually initiating now is a very big and important conversation because and it's got many layers,
yeah,
because we have been socialized and taught to blindly just obey those people who are in
mm,
authority.
mm,
And so,
mm,
especially, I think my generation and generations before me, we were
yeah,
taught that if an older person says something, you listen.
yeah,
And if they
yeah,
tell you
most
to do
definitely.
something, you listen. And
Yeah,
if you have a differing opinion to somebody who's older than you need to keep quiet because it's
yeah,
disrespectful to speak
yeah,
your mind or if you give off your opinion.
yeah,
So what this then does is it creates generations of people who are blindly obedient, who go
mm,
with whatever an authoritative figure does, and then
mm,
that in that power play where it brings in that element of control. So this
mm,
authoritative figure then can decide who does what,
yeah,
according to their needs. Now,
yeah.
that can be both positive and negative because we have
Most
people with
definitely.
good intentions and we have people with bad
Mm,
intentions, right?
mm,
So I think my stance on that is that we need to teach our children how to differentiate between what is a tricky person or an unsafe person and what is a safe
mm,
person, right?
mm,
And not necessarily this term of authoritative person, somebody
yeah.
who's older than you automatically receives respect and
Mm,
automatically gets to say what you need to do. So we need to teach our
mm,
children
mm,
boundaries. We need to teach them that they have different types of boundaries and they need to learn their voice and what they're comfortable comfortable with. And so there's many ways. I'll go into that conversation a little bit later, but it really does come down to teaching them that there are safe people and unsafe people. And again, this is fact. Okay, so you need to sort of start having conversations, age-appropriate conversations with children as to, you know, what is safe and what is unsafe. For instance, you know, I saw a beautiful blog the other day where a mother speaks to her child about, is that a good choice or a bad choice? Right? So that you are facilitating critical thinking skills. So teaching your child, look, you have autonomy to be able to decide that this is a good choice and a bad choice. If your child decides that it's a good choice and you can see, okay, perhaps they haven't considered all the dangers around this, then you can suggest things. So for instance, my son loves to climb the stairs and wants to put his legs over the edge. You need to bring it up. Do you think this is a good choice or a bad choice? And if he says a bad choice, okay, why is it a bad choice? What could happen if you do that? So that they can start to develop these critical thinking skills for themselves and realize that every decision has a consequence, right? And so in doing this, you're teaching them that they have autonomy to decide about themselves, and they get to decide what's okay, and that's essentially teaching them boundaries, okay? And what's not okay. So where do I start and end, and where does somebody else start and end? So you're teaching him autonomy, but you're also teaching him to critically analyze every single situation, right? So person, they will be able to say, okay, I'm in a scenario with this person, with a person, and this person is doing things that make me feel uncomfortable. And so I can trust that I feel uncomfortable, and therefore we can do what mommy or daddy said I need to do it whenever I feel uncomfortable. Whereas what happens now with our generation, the generations before us, we had that uncomfortable feeling, but we were taught that even despite what you're feeling, you listen to whatever that person tells you. Right. So the change comes in that we teach our kids to honor that uncomfortable feeling and what they can do in an autonomous way to protect themselves and set the boundaries. Right. Another example I like to use, and yeah, I'm going to be quite personal in this talk, is with my son. He doesn't necessarily like people to be in his physical boundaries, especially people that he doesn't know. So sometimes he doesn't want to say hi, or sometimes he doesn't want hugs. Sometimes he definitely doesn't want kisses. And so the difference is that I teach him it's okay to say no. If you don't want to hug, if you don't want to kiss somebody, if you don't want somebody in your space, you're allowed to exercise your autonomous decision to decide not to do that, despite your age. And the thing is, we're socialized, so we've been socialized to dismiss our feelings since we were very young. So even with toddlers, you'll see the grandmother comes in and, oh, give me a hug, and the baby's like, no, I don't want to.
And it's like, no, give him a hug.
And that's teaching the child not to honor their own feelings, their own emotions, and their uncomfortability. And so we're creating scenarios where we have kids who will be easily manipulated, easily taken advantage of, easily persuaded to do things, despite how uncomfortable that might make them feel. Right.
It makes so much sense. We have a comment here based on the first sector of the conversation, is that parents sometimes switch off their parenting when grandparents are around. So I'm guessing it's true. You know, you do want to unwind at times. You know, you want to just like, okay, let me just relax. You know, can that be a risk?
Yes, and yes, it can be a risk, but here's the thing: less risk, more confusion. Because what that does is now we have sort of mom's the authority figure, right?
Yeah.
Mom's the
Yeah.
that enforces boundaries and rules and so on and so forth.
Mm.
And now when
Mm.
grandparents are around and mom decides to sit back and maybe not say anything, then there's room for sort of the child to do whatever he wants to do
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
play in that,
Yeah.
because the parental role is not clearly defined, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's important, even when grandparents are around. Yes, we are human and we we sometimes go in and out of that. But when you remember, or when you catch yourself to get back into your role, because it
Mm.
does create a little bit
Mm.
of confusion. And whenever there's confusion, you can create a sense of unsafety, a feeling of unsafety. And when kids are
Mm.
feeling
Mm.
safe, they tend to act out in some sort of way.
Mm. Mm.
So when the
Mm.
boundaries are not clearly defined between roles.
Okay, cool.
Right. And risk, I said, I agree with risk if it's something that is ongoing and persistent and continues all the
Yeah.
time,
Okay.
right? Then
Okay,
you are
cool.
developing a risk. But if it's something that doesn't happen as often, then
Yeah.
obviously the risk is reduced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. So I actually didn't even look at it that way. That I'm always, oh, what risk can I avoid? I didn't think about confusion at all. Because yeah, I really do get the whole resting. So, what would be a healthier way to
Mm-hmm.
actually be around extended family members and still want to be in control, but also not want to be in control, but still portray your parenting role and want to just ease off a bit and just relax?
I'm trying to think of a way that those things can exist at the same time. Because when you're parenting, right? You're a
Yeah.
conscious parent. To be conscious parents, right? And you need to be present and do parenting the way you would ordinarily do it, right?
Mm,
I would
mm,
suggest, if you want a break, leave the room, leave the space, sort of
yeah.
create a separation, because then it's not
Okay.
separation, you're not really on a break then,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can't parent and not parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those things can't exist at the same time. So I would then say, if you want rest, or if you want space, or if you need a breather, make a create a physical distance so that you are not around and it does not create then confusion for
Makes
the child.
sense.
Also,
Makes a
yes,
lot of
parents
sense.
do, ask grandparents to look after kids so you can have a breather.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
love on yourself a little bit so that you have more love to give.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right,
We
right.
have another one. Love it. Honor the uncomfortable feeling. That is very. I also love that. I also love that. And I love the phrase that you also use, like honor it. Because it really shows that not only are you respecting your child's feelings, but you're also taking them into consideration. So, because I would love to believe that respect goes both ways. It goes both to the child, and from the parent to the child, and from the child to the parent, and those two can actually coexist. And it's quite uncomfortable if one may be very undermined, and I think it also could be the main reason why I also feel like, because respect is very different for everybody, and everybody wants respect, and we actually demand it at times from people. And this is just a question that actually just came to mind now. Could that be the cause of you being undermined as a child, that you feel like you now want to demand respect and you want to so heavily be respected? Could that be one of the side effects of um, obeying authority, or just putting like authority into the terms of parenting? Because I do actually agree with the whole term of, I think it could be better if the term authoritative figures does fall away, and just it be a teaching your child what's safe and what's unsafe.
Yes. So to answer your question, if I understand you correctly, it goes back to that blind obedience, right? We are told, despite whatever signs, warning signs, feelings, or whatever you're feeling, or experiencing, you need to blindly obey the authoritative figure. So likewise, if you have a child that is demanding this respect but not exhibiting behaviors that warrant that respect, it's a game. You expect me to blindly be obedient, therefore I
Yeah,
expect you to blindly respect me. Right, so
right.
it does go both ways. And that's
Yeah.
why it's so important to develop critical thinking skills in our kids and to develop the sense of autonomy and empathy for them to be able to distinguish for themselves, um, what's happening here. Let me look at the situation and let me see what's happening.
Yeah.
Is this person deserving of respect? Are they treating me in a way that I feel I can respect them, or are they doing things that are overstepping my boundaries completely? So yes, I agree with you. It is interlinked in that way.
Okay. There's another comment, says there's also the issue that grandparents kind of undermine your authority when they are around your child. How do you guys tell your grandparents not to feed your child sweets at midnight?
So you see, did you see the last question there? How do you guys tell your grandparents not to feed your child sweets at midnight?
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
coming from somebody in our generation that has been taught that you do not question somebody who's older than you, or you do
yeah.
not correct, or you do not make your needs clear to somebody who's older.
Mm,
So my answer to that, and I mean I've gotten flack for this quite a bit as well, is that I if if somebody is older than me, obviously there are general rules of being respectful, okay? But if it is something where I have a differing opinion or I have a need that I need that person to respect, you need to make it clear. This is your child, and so it's your responsibility to take care of your child, right? So
yeah.
I had rules. My child's not allowed to have sweets. And, I made that abundantly clear. This is how I feel.
Mm,
This is how I choose to parent. And I
yeah,
would really appreciate it if you respect the boundary. So
yeah.
similarly, so that type of conversation needs to start being had with
Mm,
parents,
mm,
so that they can respect the boundaries that parents choose to create for their kids, because boundaries are created for safety. It's created so that children know what the bounds are and therefore how to regulate their behavior within those bounds, right? So by crossing boundaries, or by overstepping boundaries that mom and dad have set, what are you teaching your child, your
yeah,
grandchild?
yeah.
You are teaching them more than just, oh, I get sweets from grandma and grandpa, but you are teaching them that I do not have to respect boundaries. I do not have to
Yeah.
respect the rules that have been put there to protect me. So it's about facilitating those kind of conversations. And I'm not trying to be difficult and say, hey, it's my child, I want to parent how I parent. There's thinking that went into it, right? And there's reasons why you don't want your child to have sweets at midnight.
Yeah,
And there are
yeah.
other ways grandparents can show their love and affection that doesn't involve sweets at midnight.
That's true. It's very true.
Right. So we
Yeah.
need to facilitate those kind of conversations with grandparents. Again, to talk about what are the roles, what are the boundaries. Let's all work together as a family. It takes to raise a child, so let's all
Yeah.
work together
Yeah.
in order to create a safe environment for our
Yeah.
child.
Okay. So, case scenario.
Yeah.
I am a generation where you've mentioned before boundaries have not been set, and literally I obey every single person that I deem is older than I, right? And I've also got a child. And it's quite difficult, and I'm very weary. I'm not even sure if there is actually a right time, because I've been spending, I don't know, half of my child's life, the three, let's now 1.5 years And I haven't been able to do that because I have a fear, you know, of being abandoned, being left out. Because if I now stand up for myself, what if I get left out? What if everybody turns their back on me? So now, where to from here? You know, from myself, you know, is it worth the risk? Or should I just leave it? Or should I now find different ways for spending time with family? Should I now limit that? You know, what is it that I can do to improve and build a healthier relationship with my child and my extended parts of the family, so that they too can have a good relationship without me having feeling undermined.
Mm. So here's the thing. You said, is it worth the risk? That would be for you to
Mm.
decide. I always say that to my clients. You know, whatever happens within a conversation, people
Yeah.
will throw things around, but it's up to you to decide whether the risk is worth it or not.
Mm. Mm.
Having said that, you are dealing with something that is bigger than just you, right? These are
Yeah.
generational. It's
Yeah.
generational stuff. So that also has to be kept in mind. The change is not necessarily going to come overnight, and there
Mm.
there will be a lot of hiccups. There will be a lot of
Yeah.
arguments, fights, or disagreements, or whatever you want to call
Mm.
it.
Mm.
But that's the nature of change, especially when you're trying to change something that is generational,
Mm.
of the nature
Mm.
of being generational.
Mm.
So again, keeping that in mind, you have to decide what's best for you and what's best for your child. Once you have that in mind, then you can tackle whatever lies ahead. So, for
Yeah.
instance, say you have now decided you want to change, you want to parent your child in a specific way, teaching
Mm.
them boundaries, teaching them how to be mindful of setting their boundaries and to be able to be autonomous in doing that.
Mm.
Then you have to tackle things as they come. First and
Yeah.
foremost, there has to be a discussion with grandparents, extended family members, even siblings and so aunts and uncles,
Mm.
about your said parenting ways. Right? It
Mm.
doesn't
Mm.
necessarily have to be a sit down. Oh, let's sit down and have a discussion. But
Mm.
in whenever it comes up or whenever it crosses your mind, to be able to sit down and create scenarios where this type of conversation can take place,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
to create change,
Mm.
to talk to your fear of being left out, your fear of being ostracized. It's a legitimate fear, right? I think that is what keeps people, shackled. It's a strong
Yeah.
word. I know it's a strong, but what keeps us in check, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that blind obedience of the authoritative figure who is in power really instills that power through fear, right? So
Mm.
if
Mm.
you don't listen, you will be punished in whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that fear that you have exists because of the nature of how we were socialized and
Mm.
raised.
Mm. Mm.
It is a fear, it's a legitimate fear. You have to decide whether it's worth the risk or not. Okay,
That's
but
true.
when it comes to whether you want to change whether you want to create a different lifestyle or a different way of rearing for your child,
Mm.
then
Mm.
you have to have those difficult conversations. You have to set the boundary, and you
Yeah.
have to be sometimes rigid about those boundaries, especially when it comes to the well-being of your child and what you have decided
Mm.
for
Mm.
your child. And yes, sometimes that does mean disagreements with family. That sometimes that does mean not talking for a while. But the system will always reorganize itself,
Mm.
to
Mm.
remain functional, right? So you
Mm.
might not talk
Mm.
for a while, but it won't necessarily be for forever. Because again,
That's
the
true.
best interest of the child has to be
Yeah.
taken into
Yeah.
consideration.
That's true. That's
I'm not
very
sure if
true.
that answers your
It
question.
it definitely does. It definitely does. So another one, right? This is a bit of touchy feely, go-y, you know. I think we did touch on it, but I just want to extend it just a little bit. That for a child to be raised up into thinking to always be obedient, tend to be easy targets for sex offenders. So that being like you've said, you totally disregard how you're feeling, being guilt tripped into showing affection for somebody, so forth and so on. So that one, how what are ways to actually teach your child? I know it's really, there's different ways on how to teach your child not to, I wouldn't say fall into the trap, but be to critically think, like you've mentioned, on whether to go with a person, don't go with a person. This person wants to touch me, I should not let them touch me. This person wants to hug me, or this person wants to do whatever it is that they may want to do. How is it? Can we teach our children to at least, have ways of dealing with that? I think that's how I could best put it.
I think it goes back to setting boundaries or teaching your child about boundaries and
Mm,
how to. Now we've got different types of boundaries. Okay, we've got physical
mm,
boundaries, mental boundaries, material boundaries, and
yeah.
emotional boundaries. Right. So there needs to be an emphasis on all of those boundaries, but specifically physical. And when you're teaching
Mm,
your child about physical boundaries, you need to teach them about body awareness and body
mm,
autonomy, right?
mm,
This is your body. People are not allowed to touch you on your
mm,
body, and
mm,
creating that awareness about what is theirs.
mm,
And
mm.
even to say things like, even mommy and daddy are not
Yeah,
allowed to do certain things, right? Because
yeah.
we talk about everybody else, but then we forget about mommy and daddy,
Ourselves,
okay?
yes.
Right. So we need to teach them about body awareness and
Mm,
physicality, and again, the boundaries, where I
mm,
start and end and where somebody else starts and ends. And
mm,
then to teach them about the feeling of feeling the emotional are you there? I think I lost you. You there? Are we there?
sorry, you cut off. Yeah, you cut off from
Are we
the
there?
feeling of then.
Yes, right.
Hello?
So they need to become
Yes.
aware. Can you hear me? Are we there?
Yes, yes, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So we need to also make them aware then of the emotional boundaries, right?
Mm,
The fact that when somebody is in my personal space, so they are now in my physical space, and
mm,
emotionally that makes me feel unsafe, that
mm,
makes me feel uncomfortable, that makes me feel scared. So we need to then teach them about that and how those two are
mm,
connected. So when
mm,
somebody is crossing your physical boundary and it
mm,
makes you feel whatever type of way, you are allowed to exercise your boundary and leave,
mm,
run away, scream, say whatever you need to say to an
mm,
adult, right?
mm.
Then we need to teach them about all the other boundaries, so the mental boundaries, that your thoughts are your thoughts. So even if
Yeah,
this person is telling you that what you are thinking is wrong, or your
yeah,
mommy said you must come with me, remember your
yeah.
thoughts are. Remember what
Mm,
mommy and daddy taught you. Mommy and
mm,
daddy will never send anybody anybody just to fetch you without telling you. So you
yeah.
make them confident in realizing that their thoughts are
Mm,
their thoughts and they are autonomous and they are allowed to think
mm,
those things. Anytime they feel
mm,
unsafe, they need to then exercise whatever you decided is your exit strategy or your
mm,
how to get away from a person like that.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
all goes back to boundaries. We have to teach them what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, right? Once we've emphasized boundaries, and teaching boundaries is a continuous thing. I mean, we as
Yeah.
adults still have boundaries. But then again, to go back and figure out what is a safe person and what is an unsafe person. And teaching them also about stranger danger, right?
Yeah.
Um, Strangers are people that you don't know, even if they're nice, even if they're super
Yeah.
nice. They are wanting to give you sweets or wanting you to take you to see animals or whatever the case might
Mm.
be. You don't just get into a car or go somewhere with someone else. So it's about teaching them those. And then also really, really important is that sometimes it's not a stranger and sometimes it's somebody that you know.
Yeah.
So then we go back to not blindly obeying somebody because you know them and because they're older, but to trust what you are feeling and thinking in your body. And the only way they'll trust that is if we allow them to enforce their boundaries and
Yeah.
we allow them to be able to say no and to say that they're not comfortable doing something. We
Yeah.
need to listen to our children and allow them to exercise their ability to effect their their
Yeah.
boundaries and
Yeah.
yeah, not get upset when you tell him, when somebody comes and wants to give them a hug and they say no. We automatically get embarrassed because our child is being rude. Your child is not being
Yeah.
rude. Your child is exercising their ability to say no because they feel
Yes.
uncomfortable in their physical boundary.
Most
Um,
definitely.
right. So it's about changing completely how previous generations have been raised and learning to be a conscious and allowing your child to exercise their rights of their boundaries and all types of boundaries. Right. So there's no simple fast answer, to say you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then your
Yeah.
child will
Yeah.
be safe and nothing will ever happen to
Yeah.
your child.
Yeah.
It's about also, creating scenarios with your child.
Mm.
So in play or whatever, sit down with them, be on the carpet, create scenarios of, what could potentially happen so that it plays out. That way they also remember, especially for really, when you are creating scenarios and playing with them and teaching them through play, they are more likely to remember those things when it comes to real life scenarios that they
That's
find themselves.
true. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So another one, boundaries, boundaries. So enjoying the session, ladies. Big ups. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. We appreciate that a lot. So yeah. We're almost about to wrap up, right? And thank you so much for your time, and your very insightful solutions, and just to also add the disclaimer again, I will stress this one like nobody's business. This session just covers a tip of the iceberg of whatever we may be faced with on a daily basis, right? And I do advise, I'm pretty sure that Kim would also agree with me on that one, that if you need any assistance when it comes to any challenges you may be facing, please see a psychologist or a therapist. Um, and I've mentioned before, Kim will gladly help you. And I even said that you will even sit there on the couch or on the sofa and be like, yo, Kim, remember that conversation you had with Lelo the other day about boundaries, So this is my situation right here, I practice these 3 solutions, but then I'm finding that I need 6 extra ones, So please, just help me with that one. So, we do try to cover as much as we can. However, we do fall short. And if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask us, please do contact us at Tusai Boutique KM Psychology. It's right there. I don't know where it is, like when you're watching, but for me, it's at the top there. So please, Kim, do give us your contact details and where we can actually find you if we want to come see you.
Sure. So if you go to my page, all my details are there. It's at KM Psychology. My website is also link to that, so you can get all the information there. Please don't DM me. I don't read the DMs, or I get late and then it's over. I don't have time to go through the DMs, so I rather send an email. You're more likely to get in touch with me that way. But also the contact details of the practice are also on my website.
Okay, cool. Just also add that the session has been sponsored by Atusai Boutique in partnership with Kim McKay. So thank you guys for joining us. This is the last session for this year, I would guess. I hope that we've actually amped up and packed you up with all the festivity boundaries that you can come up with. With families, extended families, distant cousins, so forth and so on. And like I've mentioned before, if you do have a certain topic that you'd like us to uncover, please do let us know and we'll gladly do that. You can DM me, I guess. I don't know. Or email me, whichever one, works for you. So yeah, because I've got all the time in the world. Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for the positive feedbacks that you give us. I really do appreciate them, and yeah, I'm also sure that Kim also appreciates them also, even though I cannot speak on her behalf because she's so quiet. So
I'm a listener.
oh, you're listening? Okay.
I just want to say that during this festive season, for everyone to exercise their boundaries. And yeah, as a parent, if you are trying to teach your child to be able to set clearer boundaries, you need to be able to do that yourself. So when you find yourself, festive season and being around family creates many opportunities where your boundaries will be overstepped. So please use it as ways to exercise how to set those boundaries and communicate better with family members. Yeah, that's my last note.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you guys next year. Wee-hee. All right.
Thank you very
Mic drop.
much. All right.
Bye.